All right, everyone. A lot of people wanted me to talk about the Florida school shooting yesterday. I refused because I don't want to give that sort of thing attention, number one. Number two, at this point, YouTube's algorithms probably massively demote your content if you talk about such issues because you're trying to compete with like CNN, so it's a problem. I'm just joking. That's not actually a reason why. But I don't want to give it attention. And also, it's so predictable what people are going to say in the wake of something like that anyway. Some person's going to say, we need less guns. Another person's going to say, no, that's not true. You're a traitor. And that's what the whole national debate ends up boiling down to that. And ultimately, nothing will be done. Ultimately, nothing will be done. But there's a silver lining to that fact, which is that the true crime spike in this country, when we're talking about gun crime, when we're talking about violent crime in general, the true crime spike is 1980s through early 90s. It peaks in the mid-90s and then it starts to decline. And I'll tell you why it's declining. We can definitely prove correlation. It's the rise of cheap home internet. For two reasons. Number one, it allows people who are socially isolated and thus potentially more likely to snap. It allows them to attain catharsis. You know, they can play the violent video game. That helps. They can also talk with people. Now, there's something funny, and I've seen this from the left. The left has said now for a year, well, if free and open internet debate, if free speech and the ability of people who are extremists to speak help to prevent them from violence, we would have seen evidence of that by now. Blah! And they puke out of all orifice when they're saying this bullshit. They fill everyone who's sane with reprehension because they're so obviously wrong. Look at the statistics. The peak of crime coincides with the early wave of truly cheap home internet starts driving the violent crime rate down. It's already working. We've already been telling you, but the crime rate can only fall to a certain level. Look, literally speaking, if you wanted the crime rate to fall further, you'd have to rescind existing gun control. You'd probably have to get rid of the automatic weapons ban, any bans on suppressors and other peripheral accessories, and everything associated with them, and allow gun imports as well. You know, there are import bans as well in this country. You'd have to rescind it all. Literally, the violent crime rate in this country was lower back during an era when people could own Tommy guns. People need to understand this. Per capita, the violent crime rate was lower at that point in our history. Now, this doesn't make sense if gun control is a magic panacea to all of your problems. And by the way, the FBI lumps in a third of all those gun deaths are suicides. A significant proportion of all of those reported deaths, and a lot of countries, they don't put suicide with the overall gun death rate. They have it in a separate category. So by the way, when you see statistics saying we're the most violent country, ignoring most of the third world, but we're the most violent developed nation, we're actually not. Not once you fix the fact that people conglomerate their statistics differently. Marco Rubio comes out and he delivered a fairly decent rebuttal to the idea of gun control. And he pushes the line. This has been the GOP's sort of new thing. The GOP's new line is, well, we need, better mental health in the country. I agree, by the way, we do. We should double the budget for that if we can, because it's been a problem. We've taken people who have, their problems with poverty, social isolation. They're not getting the medication they need and whatever, and it becomes a threat to society. However, and here's a big however, the GOP is pairing that now with the idea that, we should have the mentally ill shouldn't be able to own guns. You should have a mental health background check of some point. Absolutely disagree. It's also unconstitutional, and I'll tell you why. You are arbitrarily determining which kinds of mental illness could cause violence. What about depression? That's not going to cause any gun violence, unless you mean gun suicide. But the thing is, if someone's depressed enough to kill themselves, having a gun isn't going to make them more likely to kill themselves. They can open a vein. They can take a handful of pills. They can gas themselves in the garage. They can hang themselves. So, it's not exactly removing the ability for them to harm themselves. They're probably not going to harm other people. If you try to stop them from hurting themselves, maybe they attack you with a knife, but it's unlikely. They're sad. What about social anxiety? That's not going to cause violence, if anything. As long as they're still maintaining social connections, maybe online, probably less likely to be violent. I think there are certain disorders that cause the population with that disorder to be less likely to commit certain crimes. I believe in literature, this is the case. Paranoid schizophrenics, I believe are inversely correlated with violent crime, like become more passive, more withdrawn, more less likely to harm somebody, and are generally considered not to be a threat at all. And I can't remember 100% if that's this specific disorder. Maybe somebody who knows more about psychiatric terminology maybe can tell me if that's right. But I do know that there are disorders that are inversely correlated with certain types of crime, including violent crimes. So if someone has a disorder where it makes them less likely to flip, would that be a problem? By the way, that same basic argument could be extended to other things. You could say, well, men should have a background check, women not so much, but men should, because, you know, most violent crimes involve men. Okay, well, that technically, on the same token, makes sense, but it's an arbitrary determination. It's not constitutional to implement such a thing. It's a little bit, and Marco, by the way, when he delivered his speech, some people were amusingly saying, oh, Marco Rubio is making the argument for legalizing all drugs. Yes, he is, and we should. Absolutely. Maybe if someone's a heroin addict, they shouldn't be carrying a revolver around. But again, I mean, what mechanism is in place without endangering other civil rights, endangering people's other liberties to actually police such a thing? Sort of like the abortion debate. It's like, how is it actually policed? You can't. So give up fucking trying. You can give it all the moral platitudes you want to why something should be restricted or banned. It doesn't matter. It's like with guns. It's the same basic thing. You could ban all guns. You'd say, well, we're going to rescind the Second Amendment by constitutional mandate. Okay, it's not going to work. Let's assume that you manage to get by without causing a revolutionary or civil war, and it doesn't flatline society and you know, the gun owners overthrow you and then institute the Second Amendment again. Let's assume that doesn't happen. It doesn't mean there aren't guns in the country. It just means they're all illegal now. And by the way, the left isn't anti-gun. They're very pro-gun. They're very pro-gun when it came to giving them to cartels, Fast and Furious, which you never hear anything about anymore. When Obama was giving guns and even like missiles and shit to the FSA, Islamic terrorists over in Syria, that was fine. They're not anti-gun then. They're not anti-gun when it comes to the idea of building new weapons to challenge Russia. You know, weapons way bigger than an AR-15. By the way, they don't even know what an assault rifle is. Why should I listen to their logic? So yeah, it's kind of obvious I'm against all forms of gun control. I think we should bring back automatic weapons and people should be able to own hand grenades and stuff. It's not going to suddenly cause somebody who wasn't violent potentially to begin with to become violent. It looks like the specific shooter in this case was bullied and harassed for years. Now that's not obviously an excuse for what happened. But if we had a better mental health system and the educational system wasn't cookie cutter cog mode and teachers actually gave a damn, maybe some things like this wouldn't happen. Maybe you want to look at the way the schooling system works. Look, you can make a big show about saying we're going to ban bullying. It's never going to happen, but you can address it. Once it has happened, you can help console someone who's been bullied. You can create a program to help on that end. You can't stop people from doing bad things, but you can help to limit the impact of that. By the way, you can have a polite society all you want. You can have less guns or less offensive speech. It's not going to stop crime. It's simply not. If somebody's a psycho, they're still going to be a psycho. Look, they'll get a bunch of fertilizer and diesel fuel or something. They'll make explosives. They can kill way more people that way. Look at Waco. Don't tell me that trying to ban guns is going to prevent. Look at Europe right now, where they'll run you over with a truck, plant an explosive. You get knife attacks, things of that nature. Those can be just as devastating. There was a knife attack, I believe, late last year in China. I think they killed like 20 people just with knives. They didn't even need a gun to kill that many people. And by the way, you still don't want to talk about the correlation between certain, maybe zealot cults and violent crime. That's considered unacceptable, but it's totally okay to say, well, the Armalite 15 rifle is an automatic 1,000 round a minute baby killer and should be banned. Then they drag in the little comparison with cars. They're like, oh, guns should be regulated by cars. You need a license and, it has to be tested. We have to make sure you're competent. Yeah, and also I can own 20 cars. As long as they're on my own property, you can't restrict them at all. I don't pay taxes on them. I don't need to insure them. You're not responsible I can modify them in any way I want. That sounds okay. Yeah, so as long as the gun is on your property, you can convert it, make it fully automatic. You can make it a grenade launcher. You can manufacture its own. You can have an ammo mill. It's okay. Yeah, that sounds like a fair trade-off. Not a great one. Because the people who would do that primarily would be crazy, but you could implement that. Some people have said, oh, I wish that my ovaries were regulated the way guns were, which is not at all. Okay, so you need a waiting period to have sex. Okay. Background checks in most cases, for 90% of your prospective mates, you need that, a background check. And in some states, you can only have a certain number of egg cells to be ammunition. Yeah. By the way, fuel, you can buy fuel too. I don't see car ammunition being limited as far as magazine size. It's saying you'd only have a two gallon tank on your car because any more it might be threatening to people. You might run more people over with your assault car, with the expanded car ammunition magazine. Come on. So the left's not in favor of gun control when it comes to foreign militants or to cartels or to the military. Look at Kent State. The one school shooting they never talk about is Kent State. Now, wonderful. Let's give the government. Trump is Hitler. Let's give him the right to confiscate people's weapons. Nothing could go wrong with this plan. Do you realize how doofy you sound? Do you realize how moronic that sounds? Look, at some point, you've got to start using a little bit of common sense and stop just trying to morally, like virtue signal. Like, I get this every time I would talk about this. I guess I'm saying, you just want dead children. No, it's a case of, I don't think that dead children is prevented by taking guns out of law-abiding hands. I don't think dead children is prevented by that. I think preventing dead children involves more spending on mental health, yes. Better school system, like stop being cookie cutter mode. The federal government being involved in the school system is a disaster. We should give it back to the states and just have rudimentary judicial oversight to make sure it's not like discrimination or some school district is so terribly underfunded it's got dirt floors. That's fine. Otherwise, get the federal government out of teaching standards. Number 3, get rid of shitty teachers. Some of the problem lies on the backs of teachers. You've got some teacher, they're tenured, they're in a union so they can never be fired. They don't even care about their students. They're not going to talk to them after class. They're going to do the bare minimum that they can do. They're not serving the students well. And even if there isn't a school shooting, they go on, they graduate, they have a subpar education, now they can't get a job. Have you not screwed them for potentially the rest of their fucking lives? And then you've got all these people in government. Trump is correct. He says it's not enough to simply say, feel like we're doing stuff or say we're doing stuff. We need to actually do something about this. Yes, exactly. And for years now, all it is bickering over whether this class of firearms should be banned or not. That doesn't solve anything. The ban's not going to happen. You're not going to get your way. It's unconstitutional. Deal with that fact and find some other solution. You want to know one way to reduce the violent crime rate? More free speech online, and I shit you not that would actually happen. You prevent a lot of the censorship, you'll see another decrease in the crime rate. I absolutely guarantee it. Try it. Try it. Trump should come forward and suggest that. Look at the statistics. Look at the obvious correlation there. Look at the obvious correlation for 20 years of data, nonstop, between violent crime, not just gun crime, but violent crime in general, and the rise of the internet allowing people psychological catharsis for their various problems in life. Allowing them to take out their aggression on a video game, allowing them to talk to other people who can modulate them. They're getting, fanaticized. They are getting radicalized. One of their friends steps in online. Some random stranger steps in. What are you doing with your life? You're going to end up getting yourself killed. Hopefully it makes them think twice about committing an act of violence. We need more of that, not less. We don't need more free speech restrictions. We don't need more gun restrictions. What we need to do is actually give a damn about people. And let me tell you, the group to give a damn is generally not the federal government. So when the Democratic Party says they'll be benevolent in taking your guns, they'll be benevolent in dispensing money for mental health, they'll be benevolent in who they decide to ban having firearms based on some arbitrary mental illness, they'll be benevolent. Don't worry, your kids are safe at this federalized fucking school. No, they aren't. They're not safe at school. They're not safe anywhere. The world's not safe. You're going to die someday. At some point, the world's going to take you out. That you can avoid it for 100 years. At some point, you're going to be below ground or turn to ashes, or they're going to put you in one of those capsules with fertilizer where they bury you with a sapling and turn you into a tree, or they're going to compress you into a piece of cubic zirconium. You will be quite dead someday. Nobody escapes the world alive. If you want to prevent people from premature and crazy death like this, if you want to protect your kids, let them speak freely. Help them when they're being bullied. Don't have these teachers unions that shield teachers that are shitty and don't do anything about these problems. I had situations. I went to good schools generally, but there are always going to be teachers that don't give a fuck. Fire them. Get rid of them. They shouldn't be protected by the unions. Come after the teachers unions if you want to go after a group that causes crime. By underserving kids, that's going to drive the crime rate up. By not caring if they're bullied, that could cause a school shooting. Breathe down their necks. The NRA is not telling people to kill each other. It's just not happening. So yeah, there's my thoughts on it. People need to stop the virtue signaling. Anyone who wants to have a debate on the topic and say Styx wants dead children, you're welcome to it in the comments section, of course. I'm not going to go on video and do that. I've got better things to do, like drink highly caffeinated beverages. That's about all. Peace out.